Welcome to GitLab's release webcast. At GitLab, we have one vision: everyone can contribute. And that underscores absolutely everything we do. So I thank you so much for coming in and giving your time today to find out more about using GitLab. In this webcast today, we're actually going to be looking at some highlights of our latest release, 8.5, both CE and EE versions. And actually, it's great because you're going to see some of these new features in practice when we take a dive into the GitLab Flow overview. We're going to talk about workflow and how it looks from the user interface, but then in a big view, how that looks in terms of the workflow and how you collaborate with your colleagues or on various projects. While we're actually presenting and as we're talking, we'll be keeping an eye out in the Q&A tab. So if you have questions, please do share them in the questions tab. I'll be looking at them and trying to answer them as we go, but we will have a section where we just talk and answer your questions. And at the very end, we have some really cool GitLab community news. We're going to share some insights with you about the contributors in our community and just how big it is. We're so excited. My name is Heather McNamee. I'm the developer marketing manager here at GitLab. And sometimes if you message us on Twitter, that'll be me sometimes talking. So I'm always happy to hear from GitLab users. GitLab, if you are brand new to it, you can find out about it on our website. It's where you collaborate on code. It is a really feature-packed service. It's fantastic because you can use GitLab.com completely free, unlimited private and public repositories. People are always surprised that it is actually unlimited. But you can also run it on premises, and that's a fantastic option for people too. So we distribute the software once a month, and new features are coming out all the time. And so that model is something we're going to talk about a lot. So do check out our website if you want to find out more. There's 100,000 organizations using GitLab and millions of people, so we're delighted. Our special guest in this webcast is Job van der Voort. He's VP of Product here at GitLab. So Job, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself and then talk us through 8.5.
Thanks, Heather. So my name is Job. I'm the VP of Product. That means that I'm responsible for making sure that we ship a good new version every single month. And today I'll be walking us through some of the highlights of GitLab 8.5. We shipped a lot this month. I think it's impressive. Our developers have worked hard. Our community has contributed a lot of cool things. And I'm just going to highlight some of the things that I think are very exciting about this release. Some of the things we did, we made GitLab a lot faster. It's noticeably faster for every single person. Whether you have a small instance or a big instance, GitLab is faster. This is something we've worked for the past few months on, and we're pretty proud that what we've done this release. We've also made it easier to prioritize what is important, how you can get started working, what you should focus on. We improved the interface, and we added some cool new powerful Git tools to this release. So let's not wait any longer, and then I'm just going to show you some of the new features. So I'm just going to switch my workspace. Right, so you're looking at my GitLab instance where I have a bunch of projects. And this is what you typically see as the dashboard. In this case, I chose that I want my projects to be visible in the dashboard, but as you know, you can configure this. So if you look here, the first thing that you might notice, you might not because it's very small, here in the top right, there's a new icon. And this is the to-dos. In this case, I have 4 to-dos. Let's click on it and see what it does. So the to-dos is a very smart way to quickly know what you should pay attention to in GitLab. So whenever you get mentioned or you get assigned something, whether it's a merge request or a comment or an issue, GitLab automatically creates a to-do here for you. And what GitLab will do is it will track whether you followed up with that to-do. So if you had any action related to it, it will automatically remove the to-do and set it as done. Or if you manually choose to set it as done, that also works. So let's have a look. I have here Heather. This is the Heather that you're just listening to. Mm-hmm. And she mentioned me in an issue. And let's have a look at it. So here you see the issue, and you might already notice that there's something different. And one of the big changes this release is that we made the focus on content even more important. So we changed the view a bit here in in the center of the issues, but more importantly, here to the side, the sidebar has been changed completely. Now it's accessible no matter where you are looking, whether there's a long comment thread or not. And if you're not needing it, you can simply fold it back in. So in this case, header says revert update of logo because we're going back to the old one. And please note, this is a joke. We're not actually going back to the old logo. She says, okay, you can have a look at this. And she linked a comment. So let's have a look. So we're looking at a commit Dimitri made 8 months ago, changing out the old logo for the new one. Now, let's say that we regretted this decision, which we don't. Let's say that we regretted this and we want to revert this. In the past, you would have to go back to your command line, back to your terminal, do a git revert, make sure that it's working correctly. In this release of GitLab, all we have to do to revert this commit is simply go here to the top right and press revert. GitLab will ask where you want to revert it, and in this case, we always work from master, so we want to revert it back on master, and we want to start a new merge request just to review our changes. So I'm just going to press revert, and what GitLab is now going to do is it's going to check, hey, can I make this revert? Can I make this revert commit on top of master? And if that's possible, it's going to create a new branch, and it's going to open a merge request with this specific revert. And so what you see is that the title is already pre-formatted, saying that we're going to revert this commit. And actually, the commit message also already shows this reverts this specific commit. And as you know, this will link back. Now, remember that if you have a merge request, and whenever it gets merged, you want to automatically close an issue, you can do that very simply in GitLab. And in this case, we're going to do that. So we're going to say fixes number 4. There we go. So you will see very shortly what will happen. I don't have to sign it to anyone because I just want to view my changes, so I'm just going to submit the merge request. And as you can see, I can review my changes here. It puts back the old logo, it removes the new one with the SVG here. And of course, GitLab automatically and immediately starts a build, or in this case, it's pending. So what I would do in normal circumstances is I would press merge when build succeeds. So whenever CI says this is a good build, this still all works, then automatically merge it. In this case, I'm going to press merge immediately to merge it right away. You will also see that if I accept this merge request, it will automatically close that issue that header created. So let's merge it.
Actually, had a question as well. Can we revert commits that are not the last commit?
Yeah, so this is just any commit in a branch. What GitLab will do is it will just do the git revert action. It does not have to be any commit. There's a possibility that you run into conflicts, but GitLab will warn you of that. All right, so the revert was merged. We can remove the source branch. And if we wanted to go crazy, we could even revert the revert, but let's leave that for another time. Let's have a look at the issue. So I said this fixes 4, and we see indeed that this issue has now been closed because we merged this revert. You see here exactly what happened actually. And then if I were to go back to my to-dos, you see in fact that the to-do, remember there were 4, is now gone. And now if I go to done, you will see that on top, here's my old to-do. Because I finished exactly what header asked me to do. So I mentioned that GitLab is faster this release, and this is something that you have to experience. And I'm going to demonstrate you how it's faster because, I mean, it is really fast. I showed you the to-dos, making it easier to get to what is important, to focus on what you're expected to do. I showed you the new sidebar for issues and merge requests, and I showed you the ability to revert. But besides these features, we added a number of other improvements in GitLab that I would like to highlight briefly.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, there's actually so many questions and a lot of excitement about the features you've shown, and certainly the revert commit is interesting. So maybe we could just answer a few questions about that, I think. Is that okay?
Sure.
Cool, okay.
Yeah.
So So a few things. Well, just generally, if you could describe how are merged commits reverted, I think that might answer the second question that was asked, which is, can you actually revert more than one commit per merge request?
Yeah, so it simply in the backend it just uses the git revert action, and in this case it would point it to the merge commit. So it would point to the merge commit and make a single commit to revert multiple commits, if that makes sense.
Excellent, that's helpful. And I think someone's actually asked a question about, will these automatic revert merges be set up as fast forward merges? But that kind of gets into a feature you're actually going to talk about. Why don't you proceed?
All right, so some of the other features in this release that are definitely worthwhile to mention are to GitLab Pages, which is exclusive to Enterprise Edition, we now added DLS and CNAME support. So that means that if you have your own domain, for instance, my personal domain would be joopvandevoort.com, I could point that to one of my GitLab Pages websites, for instance. And besides that, I can also have my own certificate so that my website is served behind HTTPS. We also added labels in milestones in the milestone view, which I have a screenshot for you in a bit. We improved the tools to vote. So now we introduced voting a while ago in GitLab, but we didn't introduce yet tools to sort by popularity and such, and that's now all available. So you can easily see in your issues overview what is the most popular thing. You can sort by that. It's really quite powerful. And in addition, we also started rendering SVGs in divs. So if you have a nice SVG, you can quickly see it. Here you can see how the milestone looks now. So this is the milestone view, and this is actually of our release 8.5. And you can see that it's much easier now to see to which label, to which category that you created with a label, certain issues in the milestone now belong. So you can quickly get an overview of how the status of the milestone. You want to make sure that things like bugs are moved to ongoing or completed. And then there's a really nice announcement that we made this release. With GitLab 8.5, we're introducing the alpha for GitLab Geo. GitLab Geo allows you to have a mirror in a different location from your original GitLab instance. And this means that if you have a team, for instance, we have a team in San Francisco and one in the Netherlands. We have many more, but these are quite far apart. If you want to make sure that the team in the Netherlands can quickly clone and pull any changes from the projects that they use on a daily basis, then doing that all the way to San Francisco means that there's a good chance there's a strong delay there. And they don't want to be sitting around. Everyone wants to be able to quickly clone and pull their changes. So with GitLab Geo, you can have a mirror, and that mirror will mirror the original instance, in our case in San Francisco, and that way the whole team can quickly access the code. Eventually, everyone still pushes to the same server, so you still have a single source of truth, but a lot of the pain of having to wait for these slow clones and these slow pulls, that has been relieved. This is an alpha. That means that we're still working very hard on making sure it works well for everyone, but this is for our Enterprise Edition customers, something they can already try now. So, are there any more questions, Heather, from the audience?
Yeah, definitely. Well, actually, one thing was a question about the GitLab logo SVG wasn't rendered in that revert, apparently. I didn't actually catch that myself, but did that not get rendered?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the specific situation is in this case and why we didn't render it here and otherwise. It might have to do with the way that we include it in the source code, or the fact that it was a diff in a certain way.
Excellent. So someone was also looking at the mirror feature and wondering, would it be possible to say convert a mirror to a master?
At this point, this is an excellent idea. At this point, this is not something we are working on. I think we will do something like that in the future. But right now, this is still an alpha stage, so we're still working hard. The core functionality is there. We are just making sure that all the documentation is in line, it's easy to configure, and then we'll start thinking about having such features.
Excellent. And another question came in about, wasn't related to something you spoke about, but it's interesting because of the performance improvements that people are experiencing. The question actually is, what would be the ideal hardware specs that would affect performance? That information is on our website in the installation docs, and I'll let Job answer. But I also want to point out that on our blog right now, it's a really interesting post by Yorick, who worked on the performance improvements, and he sort of brings you into the way he thinks, the way he kind of tackled these performance problems. So if you're really interested in performance, I would definitely recommend seeing that blog post. But Job, do you want to just briefly just outline some of the hardware specs that would affect performance?
Yeah, I think you should just refer to our installation manuals. We recommend a minimum of 2 GB and to make sure that you have some swap space. But it all depends on how you're going to use your GitLab instance, with how many users and what kind of projects. So I would refer to our documentation for that.
Fantastic, cool. The inevitable question comes up, of course, when we see these features come into EE, what's the likelihood of this getting into the CE product?
This is a really good question, and that all depends on the question that we ask ourselves: is this something that is interesting mainly for larger teams, for organizations, or is this something that is interesting for smaller teams? So in this case, I would say that this is definitely, GitLab Geo is definitely something more interesting for very large teams that are very distributed and have very large repositories. That is usually what we are thinking about. If we see that we bring a certain feature to Enterprise Edition that we know that the community or the community responds, then we can always consider bringing it to the Community Edition. It all depends. It's a case-by-case basis kind of thing.
That's fair. There's a few questions actually about various feature requests, and I'm going to hold those questions towards the end because we're actually in our community news. We're going to talk about how you can put forward your feature proposals, bug reports, etc. So I will hold those off, and I see there's a lot of them. So thank you so much for that. It always makes GitLab better. I wanted to ask, going back to the merge request, I hope I'm saying this right. The person is asking about reverting merges, and in rare cases, this person would want to revert a merged branch, a merged branch rather than the first branch. So I was just wondering if that's possible in a feature request. I'm not sure if I should have saved that to the end, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some complex cases where a simple revert might not work. If you've merged something, you can do a git revert on the merge commit. If you do not have that, of course, you have to think about how you're going to attack this. Git revert in itself is something that is quite complex to use, and we try to make it much easier to do. But there's going to be cases where you really have to think about how am I constructing this merge request. For instance, what you could do is you could start with the latest commit, or even if you have a lot of commits that you want to revert, but you want to do it in a single merge request, you could simply start by reverting the earliest one in the tree, and then opening that branch and starting to do the revert, starting adding revert commits on top of that. This is a complex procedure. I think it's worth for us to spend some time in our documentation and blogs about it, because it all depends on the situation.
Excellent, fantastic. Well, I think that there's one more question about mirroring, and it's interesting about, can the mirroring feature be used for high availability? So say you're doing an online upgrade of GitLab.
So GitLab is highly available. So meaning you can set up a highly available setup in several ways, and we have extensive documentation on this for our Enterprise Edition customers. The idea with this is not to have a failover instance somewhere else on the world. The idea is that you have quick access to that. So the intention of this is different, and right now this is not the point of this feature.
Excellent, that's cool. I think this is such an early stage for that, and we're going to get more feedback, which is just going to make it better. Just before we wrap up these questions, there's one interesting one about the to-do functionality. This person actually wondered, is there a way to show the old issue in the to-do tab without creating a new one? And I think I can answer that question. It's interesting. Just by mentioning someone on an old issue, it will be on their to-do tab. So the recency of the issue really isn't what's tracked. The event is someone being assigned to an issue or someone being mentioned. And in fact, we're going to have a blog post about that really soon. I just spoke with Douglas, who, brought that feature to life, and it's a fantastic story. I think that we'll move on right now, so we can talk about GitLab Flow, because there are some questions about the workflow, and I think actually we're on the verge of answering those. So just going to the next section here, we're going to take a look at the GitLab workflow in practice. And you hear a lot about Git flow and different types of Git workflows. They're really just concepts. And we share these concepts to try and share best practices of how we all work and how we collaborate. But GitLab's a completely flexible system. And when I've spoken with clients, what they love is that they can actually just drop GitLab into their existing workflow and it just works. So while it is opinionated, you're going to see that there are some things, the way that things are interconnected and linked, and how things happen to make your work a little more efficient. It does have an opinion about an ideal workflow. And so that's what we're going to show now, actually. So I'm going to hand this over to Yob, who's going to sort of talk us through how we work at GitLab and how you can use the tool.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I think that's a really nice way to put it. We are opinionated, and our software is made in a way that it works very well if you use it in our way, but at the same time, we realize that there's over 100,000 organizations using GitLab, so we want to make sure that everyone can use GitLab efficiently and in the way that they would like to. So what I'm showing today is how we typically work within GitLab with GitLab. And in the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about like branching strategies. So we published some articles and we have some documentation on GitLab Flow, like our specific branching strategies. I'll talk about that shortly at the end. I'm first going to walk us through what is the typical workflow and what do we recommend you to use if you have no idea or you have no preference for this. So it's always a good idea to start with an issue. Whenever you're working on something, it's a good idea to just write down what happened, what do I want to happen. In this case, I actually took a screenshot from someone in the community that created this issue, and he says, oh, something is broken. And the issue was actually picked up by Phil, and we'll get back to that in a bit. And what you will see is that this issue, as people are working on it, it will automatically cross-link to any relevant resource. People will add comments here, but if you have relevant things like a merge request, they will automatically be linked here as well. So start with an issue, apply maybe a label or a milestone if that's important to you. That's always a good place to start. So the next thing you want to do is you want to start working on it. So you're a developer, there's an issue you have to work on. Now, the moment that you have something to commit it, so you have some point where you say, okay, I'm going to make a commit. In normal circumstances or in traditional circumstances, maybe you would think to yourself, okay, but I'm not done with this yet. It's just that I made a commit and because I'm happy with what I did until now, but it doesn't satisfy the requirements of the specific issue. So what we actually recommend you to do is to immediately push those changes to GitLab, create a merge request, and put in front of it WIP, work in progress. What allows you to do what happens is that if you do this, and you can see this in the screenshot, GitLab will disallow anyone from merging this merge request, but it does allow you to share your code and to actually have code review while you're still working on this. So people can start looking at what you're doing and correct you earlier if necessary, or provide you with other help while you are working on this. And this creates a really nice platform to work together on code rather than doing it all by yourself locally. And here, of course, you also have, the moment, in this case, Alfredo made a merge request and he says fixes and then an issue number. In that issue number, in that issue, you will see this merge request cross-linked, actually, as you can see here on the bottom, one related merge request. And there it will also show the status and even the build status of CI. So this is a really nice way, and it all happens automatically to keep everyone in sync. Like, okay, I'm working on this. You don't have to report to anyone. No, you just create a work in progress merge request in GitLab, and GitLab will automatically show that you are working on this and what the status of this is. So after a few commits, or maybe a single commit in the example that I have here, you might think to yourself, okay, this is good enough. I want to move this forward. So what you should do is you should simply assign it to someone. We have a very simple system in GitLab. You can assign a merge request to a single person. The reason for that is that there's always a single person that has to decide at one moment or to the next to merge this, and there's always a single person responsible for doing this. We also have a feature that allows you to approve merge requests if you want to have more people involved in deciding whether something should be merged. But in the end, it's one person that presses the button. And so we recommend you to assign your merge request to the person pressing the final button. And now we are from the perspective of the person that was assigned the merge request. So here, the merge request was assigned to Jacob, as you can see to the right. And what will happen is that this merge request immediately appears on his to-dos. And as you saw, this is very hard to miss, and this is very actionable. So immediately Jacob sees this in his list, and he says, okay, Phil has a merge request that he wants me to merge. So what Jacob does is he goes in, he does code review if it's still necessary, and he adds any line comments that have things where maybe Phil needs to change. But once he's happy, once you are happy with the thing that should be merged, you can merge it. And I showed you this already before, is that imagine that you're completely satisfied with the code. Everything is ready, but CI is still running, or maybe CI is still pending. Well, we have something for that. You can simply press merge when build succeeds, and you don't have to look backwards anymore, because you know this was already good. It's just a matter of waiting for CI to turn green, and then GitLab will automatically merge it. And of course, because you've cross-linked everything, simply by mentioning an issue, the issue will also automatically be closed the moment it is merged. So if Jacob pressed merge when the build succeeds, then after it's merged, so after the build is done, it will merge, and after it's merged, the issue will automatically close, as you can see here. So to recap, always start by creating an issue. Then make sure to get out your work early. Add WIP, work in progress, in front of it, and GitLab will disallow anyone from merging your merge request. Make sure to do code review, and use merge when build succeeds to make it easier and more efficient to merge stuff. And of course, your merge commits, depending on what is in there, they will automatically communicate and close related issues.
It's really good demonstration. Before we go on to this sort of the big picture, we've had a few questions actually about workflow. One was simply, sure. When you type in WIP, it was shown in brackets. You can actually type WIP with colon. It does have to be at the start, isn't that right? Yeah, it has to be at the start.
That's correct.
Okay. And yeah. One person asked, why would you actually have a WIP merge request instead of, a regular commit to the remote repository? What's the purpose of doing a WIP MR?
So we wanted to give people the ability to use all the tools we have at the merge request. That is, having this forum in a way to discuss this specific feature, to discuss this specific thing that someone is working on. So we wanted to give someone all the power of a merge request while still working on what they have. So that is basically the point. You have CI there, CI will run. You have this really condensed conversation. You have all the links, you can assign it to someone, etc., etc. The point is visibility, making it possible to see what people are working on.
That's really good. And relating to, I suppose we didn't touch on it, it wasn't sort of necessary in this stage, but you could actually see at one point, someone decides it's approved, like this thing is okay. And this user asked, they used to actually use the thumbs up emoji in the comments to see when a merge request was approved, just at a glance. And it also tracked the time. And now that we've switched to the emoji, you can do a thumbs up, and there's no record apparently, I guess, at the time. So this person's wondering, they're actually resorted to using this approved label on their merge request. I'm wondering if you have a certain alternative for that. They know that EE users have an approval feature. What would you do if you were using CE to manage approvals?
Yeah, I think using the emoji is a nice idea. We will introduce features in the future that will allow, even in CE, that will allow like actionable voting in a way. So you need, for instance, to have a certain amount of votes to be able to merge something. Um, I think their solution is really nice. I would, of course, it depends on how much you want. I always say that you should avoid as much as possible process and like roadblocks. So I think having a label, for instance, is a nice way to do it. I would urge them to try the approvals feature in EE.
Right. They could still use a comment and actually type in colon and then start typing in their emoji, and you could have an emoji in the body of a comment. So I don't know if that's probably, I'm pointing out something obvious, but that's still possible. Just actually, we didn't, go into CI. There's so many questions about CI. I just want to tell everybody we will be doing more webcasts, and we'll have one specifically about CI because there are so many excellent questions about it. And we just sort of saw some of the magic, merge when build succeeds is only possible because of the integrated, if you integrate CI, I should say. So there's a few questions about it, and it might be interesting to touch on it. Will the CI only build from the merge source rather than the merge result? Is that right?
That's still the case, but we'll change that in the future.
Okay. And when you're using Jenkins CI function, does it let you push to a specific branch commit, or does it always go to master?
No, you can push to anything, of course. That's up to you.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you. And this person is sort of new to the whole concept of CI, actually, and they said that how are these Docker images used in CI different from running them, say, if you were using DigitalOcean droplets? I don't know if that's maybe too much detail, if it goes outside of the scope of the call, but
yeah. So CI is built on a very simple premise: is that you can have your runners, which run your code. They can be Docker images, so they can be containers, Docker containers, but they can also just be VMs. And in fact, you can also have a VM with multiple Docker containers running on, for instance, DigitalOcean. So the amount of possibilities how to define CI and how to set it up with GitLab CI, it's almost infinite. So you can basically do whatever you think is best. I think the advantage of using, for instance, Docker is because you have that very powerful ecosystem and it works really, really fast. But using VMs or anything else is just as good. You can have an old laptop maybe lying around and you can make that a CI runner. There's no problem with that.
And I think you almost, by doing as you described how it works, you may have answered this question, but this person's wondering if there was a feature which could run CI tests before accepting a merge request. I think that's what you showed. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I showed.
Cool, excellent. And I think we can sort of, I think we should move on to the next section because that might answer some of the questions of this, the big picture workflow.
Yeah, so I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is a subject that we can talk for hours and hours on, and I would love to. And please follow up with me on Twitter or wherever. But so we wrote an article some time ago about GitLab Flow, and what we were talking about specifically is how to manage your branches. What is the kind of Git workflow, just purely Git, that you should use or that we advise you to use. So say that you are building a web application, not unlike GitLab. What you want to be able to do is you want to be able to have something like continuous delivery, or you want to be able to control what goes live to production. So in the flow that we recommend, and the thing what we call GitLab Flow works as follows. You have a master branch, and from the master branch, everyone branches off. So if you're starting a new feature, you start at the head of master, you create a new branch, you develop your feature, and then you merge it back eventually after the process that I showed back into master. Now, what you could do is you could have automatically master deployed on, for instance, a staging area. So you know what the latest status of application, you have it always available, and you can quickly view it there. You don't necessarily want to do this on production because you want production to be very stable. Now, to be able to have these production and pre-production environments and still have these easily accessible and automatically deployed, our simple solution is to create branches for those. So you would create, for instance, a pre-production branch, and then whenever you want to deploy to pre-production, the only thing that you have to do is create a merge request from master, from the latest master, for instance, or whichever specific commit that you want to deploy to pre-production. So you would simply do the same thing as I just showed you, create a merge request, you accept it, and then you would have automatic triggers, which of course is possible using GitLab CI, that are specific for that branch, that would deploy that branch on any changes. And the same would go with production, but rather than from master going to production, you would simply create a merge request from pre-production to production. And whenever you would accept that merge request and it would get merged, production would automatically get updated and deployed. And that is the foundation of what we think is GitLab Flow. There's more to it and there's more thinking around it, and depending on your type of product, such as GitLab itself, you might want to have certain other branches or branches specific for releases. But the foundation is that everyone works on master, and from there you can move on to specific branches for specific purposes.
Excellent. You know, this is obviously bringing up a lot of questions too. Just a few questions, actually. Because there are other Git Flow concepts out there. There's GitHub Flow, Git Flow itself. I guess just to point out, what are the differentiators? What are we saying that's different from GitHub Flow specifically?
So one of the things that we like to do is have all your code available in the same repository. So, we typically recommend you to work with small teams, as small as possible in a single repository. If you allow everyone to just push their branches to that single repository, it's much easier to share code between each other. There's much less complex Git commands, everything is available, and everything is in the same place. And it makes it much easier to collaborate on code, which is eventually what you want to do when you're working on something together. There's other models like Git Flow, which is much more complex and requires third-party tools to be able to work. And for that reason alone, I could advise you to not use that model. And besides that, it's complex. Many of these models are very complex. And what we want to do is we want to present the model that we use every day. We know that it works, but it's also very accessible in the sense that you don't need fancy, you don't need complex Git commands to make this work. The only real commands that you need are the basic ones that you know.
It's helpful. I think, you're about to, finish this section. I'll proceed. There are maybe a few questions we'll get to right before community news. So if you do have questions, keep them coming in, and we will talk about them right before community news.
So I wanted to highlight 2 more features that are specific to Enterprise Edition. So if you want your commits, your merges to be fast forward, that means that you don't have a merge commit, rather your commits just appear on the top of the master, on the top of the head of the branch that you're merging into. You can do that in GitLab Enterprise Edition. It's an option. You just allow for fast forward merges. And in the same way, we have an option in EE that allows you to rebase before merging. So if it's possible to rebase your commits to be on top of the branch that you're merging into, you can do that in GitLab Enterprise Edition. Also, if you want to read more about our Git Flow ideas, you can look in our documentation. There's a good search function, so you can just search for GitLab Flow, and you will read more about it there.
Excellent. And just thinking about these, I think these questions are really good. What do you recommend for feature branches with GitLab Flow?
So it's basically what I said. Start from master. Always make sure that master is up to date. So in your local, when I start working, I always begin with pulling the latest master. Then I simply branch off. And what I always try to do is I try to make things as small as possible. So when you're implementing a feature, make sure you just implement that feature and nothing else. And as soon as you can, create that merge request, that work in progress merge request, because then you can you open up your workflow, you open up your code for collaboration. And I think that is really important. So I branch off, I push it to GitLab, I work on it there. Then as soon as what I specified as being the requirement for this specific issue, I merge it and I don't add extra stuff. Very long running branches, specifically development branches, is dangerous because there's a good chance you will end up with conflicts and other issues. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but if it is avoidable, you should avoid it to have these really long running branches. So merge off from master, branch off from master, merge back in as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's really good. It sort of hints at the next question we had, which is, what are your thoughts about using forks for your teams for individual development, and then later merging into the main application branch?
Yeah, so as I said, it's easier to not work with forks. It's easier to manage in terms of permissions. It's easier to collaborate. However, GitLab works perfectly fine with forks. So if that is your preferred way of working, go for it. All our tools work with it. Everything works as expected. If someone creates a pull request, a merge request, you can still get their code specific to the one that they created the merge request for. In general, I would say I prefer to work in a single repository. That said, working with forks also works fine.
Mm-hmm. And I think, some of the impressions people are getting are reflected in this question. I suppose maybe more of a comment. This person says that they feel like the GitHub Flow is more geared towards small teams with less branches, and GitLab Flow is scoped at larger projects that have releases. And I think you did actually talk about it in a way. We can say more specifically, if you have a SaaS product, it's very different. And if you have a product that's going to be distributed and has releases, maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think GitHub Flow and GitLab Flow have a strong overlap, right? So the essence of GitHub Flow, where they say you should fork off and then merge back in, is pretty much identical to the advice that I gave earlier, with the exception is that they advise to fork, where we say, well, maybe it's better to work locally. In all other ways, GitLab Flow just introduces the ability to have these extra branches for specific purposes, like releases or, for instance, certain environments. And I would agree that, if you have an open source repository where you cannot give everyone access to your, to push branches like our own, we don't give every single person access to push branches to the main GitLab repository, and they have to fork it. So that works excellently. I would agree that for very large teams, the GitLab Flow works really well.
Excellent. Cool. Excellent. I use excellent a lot lately. I'm just so excited. We're going to talk about feature proposals. I'm so interested to see the ideas people are having. There is just a question about upgrading. We are talking about 8.5. You've seen some of the features that are available now. And what I love about when I'm manning the Twitter account, that's me, you see sometimes on there. I love when people say they're looking forward to our release dates. They actually look forward to upgrading. And the nice thing about that is because upgrading is relatively painless with the use of Omnibus. And this person asked if they're upgrading from 7.12 and coming up to 8.5, should they upgrade straight up to 8.5? The answer is no. You should definitely upgrade. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Joop. I think we recommend they upgrade to 8.0 first. That's when CI was introduced. And after that, they can continue to upgrade. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would urge them to just read the release notes of 8.0. If you're not using GitLab CI, this upgrade should be very quick and very easy. If you are using CI in 8.0, we integrate it in GitLab, so you should definitely make sure to read up on that. You're pretty much correct, Heather.
Cool, good deal. So we're going to talk a bit about community news. And the awesome thing is we have an MVP every single month. And this month is Artem Sidorenko. So thank you so much, Artem, for all your work. It's yay. I wish we had confetti. I would just throw confetti right now. And really, a lot of the best contributions to any open source project come from developers, as they say, scratching their own itch. And in his situation, due to his environment requirements at work, they had to use this relative URL setup. Do you want to briefly describe the relative URL feature?
Yeah, sure. So typically you would have GitLab at your main domain. For instance, I would have it at jobvandevoort.com, and I would have GitLab there. I could also have it on a subdomain, for instance, gitlab.jobvandevoort.com. That would work as well. Now, relative URL support means that rather than having it on a main domain or on a subdomain, I can have it behind the domain, meaning I can have, for instance, job.com/GitLab, and I could have it there. So with this change by Artem, this is fully supported in Omnibus, and I think this is really exciting, Heather.
Yeah, it is. Even when the issue was, when the commit was made, we announced it on Twitter, and people were like, "Wow, that's really exciting!" Something like this is going to save people a lot of time. It's actually going to save Artem's team a lot of time, because up until now they still had to make it work, and they did that by doing a source-based installation, and it was a huge maintenance effort. And he really believes, and his whole team believe in something they call, and is spoken of as upstream first. The upstream first philosophy means that instead of them, forking GitLab and then trying to maintain, GitLab in a parallel universe, or trying to integrate this change every single month with the next upgrade, instead, upstream first says they go and work on getting that feature into GitLab or whatever open source project they're working on. And overall, I mean, they've got huge advantages. First of all, they're saving themselves time every month because now they don't have to maintain upgrades from a source-based installation. Omnibus package means what took them hours now takes them minutes. So they're super excited about that. The other thing they're benefiting from is that they don't have to maintain this feature anymore. It's now official. It's part of the package. We're going to maintain it now for them. So they've just offloaded some of this work. So you can imagine they are literally saving hours and hours of time every single month and throughout the lifetime of the product. They had a direct positive effect on GitLab. And Artem is actually one of over 1,000 contributors now. And again, I just want to throw some confetti out to the community and say, whoa, check out contributors.gitlab.com and you can see the contributions that have come. And like a lot of open source projects, you'll see this kind of this way where there's a large core and they have the bulk of contributions. And then there's this really long tail. And I actually do believe that a long tail is a sign of is actually a good sign. It's a sign of high community engagement and a low threshold barrier to contribution. It shows, open-minded maintainers. And, sometimes these are called drive-by contributions. I really don't like that term because it makes me think, oh, these people aren't, they don't have time to invest more time into contributing. I don't think that's the case. I actually think it shows people find something they can fix and they make a change. And sometimes, even if you've actually given us a bug report or you've given us a feature proposal, it helps us make the product better. And if you've ever done any contribution to open source, you get this awesome feeling like, hey, I did that. And I myself know this feeling. I look at it and there's a sense of ownership and you really can't beat it. And I should say actually, even I personally had something in 8.5 this month where I come up with a feature proposal. And now when I go into the UI and I see that I'm on a branch and it will show me the existing merge request for that branch, I'm going to know that I made a contribution. And even though I didn't write the code, I put in the feature proposal and I made a difference. So we really do thrive on your feedback. And check out our I should have put the link there, sorry. There is actually a page all about the contributing steps. If you go to the project right on gitlab.com, you go to the GitLab project itself, there's a contributing guide. Every open source project should have a great contributing guide. And there you can see how we recommend writing your issues or writing feature proposals. And so please do contribute. And, code's also welcome too. And our next point about community news is we have a call for writers. We'll be publishing our first contributed content very soon. It's been an excellent process for us. We're getting in other voices, people with different experience, and able to give them feedback. I hope they're learning something as well, and we're learning too. And we're excited about this project a lot. So I think there's a few more questions. Well, this actually goes back to some of the features we showed. I'll take a moment to answer a few questions. We still have a little bit of time. Okay. Yob, this one's for you. In our model, how do we deal with internal open source libraries? So where you have sort of multiple internal projects or products,
Hmm.
that rely on specific internal library versions. And they want to take updates from those from time to time.
Hmm. Well, yeah, it depends a bit on your situation. I don't immediately see the problem with that. If there are several tools within Git to be able to, have combined repositories, for instance, using submodules or, using something like Git subtree. Alternatively, I mean, if everything is available internally, it shouldn't be a problem. Um, Maybe some details on the questions would be great.
Excellent. Okay, cool. And I've pointed out earlier in the presentation, there's the please go to about.gitlab.com or search getting help, and you'll see how you can go to the support forum if you have specific questions about functionality on gitlab.com itself. And you can go to the project if you have questions about, and feature proposals, like I said. There were questions. Another question came up about the second geo instance. So we're going back to earlier in the presentation. How would you actually update that second geo instance?
So that happened, you mean to a new version?
Mm-hmm.
That's similar to upgrading a normal GitLab instance.
Oh, right. Cool. And final question we didn't really get to touch on was, can CI build the merge result rather than the branch that's being merged? Or did I ask that question?
Yeah, you did, and that's something we're introducing in a soon to come GitLab version.
Oh, okay. I may have neglected to point out we had answered that. So that concludes the webcast, the release webcast this month. So happy that you've come along and joined us to hear about the new features, and hopefully you've, you know, got some ideas about how you can work differently, and also found out how you can contribute to GitLab. And we're just really happy that you've shown up today. And we'll send you the recording if you're watching this live. And if you are watching the recording, please do check out our blog and also sign up to our newsletter to get the next invitation. Goodbye. Bye, Job.
Bye. Thanks, Heather.
Bye.